Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome their Majesties, King Abdullah II, Queen Rania Al Abdullah, His Royal Highness, Crown Prince Al Hussein bin Abdullah, Professor Klaus Schwab, and Mrs. Hildy Schwab.
Your Majesty, King Abdullah II bin Al-Hussein, Your Majesty, Queen Rania Al Abdullah, Your Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein bin Abdullah II, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, President Buhari, President Mahmoud Abbas, Excellencies, dear co-chairs, dear members and friends of the World Economic Forum, a cordial welcome to the 10th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa. It's actually the 10th time that we are here at this very special place in the world, enjoying the hospitality of the Kingdom of Jordan. The World Economic Forum has been engaged with this region since over 40 years, since the beginning of the 70s. We have worked hard with governments, with business, with civil society, and particularly also with the young generation to bring peace and prosperity to the region. I just want to mention two recent projects. The first one in cooperation with our Arab Business Council to create and to reskill 1 million people for the new jobs which are needed in the future. Or second, the opening of our Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Dubai in cooperation with the government of the United Arab Emirates. Your Majesties, Excellencies, dear friends, we are assembled here under the theme, building new platforms for cooperation. What do we mean with this theme? If we want to shape the future, we need new collaborative efforts, not only among governments, but particularly among the different stakeholders of society. The big issues in the world and here in the region cannot be met by governments alone, by business alone, by civil society alone. We need platforms for cooperation. We will focus during this meeting on 5 specific platforms. First, we have to create new ideas, new models for the economy and for society, more inclusive models, a new social contract which is more inclusive and more sustainable. Second, we have to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution and its impact. We do not want that the new gap is developing between those countries who understand and who work for mastering the fourth industrial revolution and those who are left behind. Number 3, we need to foster entrepreneurship and innovation. Only those countries who really recognize that in the time of the fourth industrial revolution, innovation is the most important competitive factor will succeed in the future. And I'm particularly proud that in cooperation with the Bahrain Economic Development Board, we have assembled here and integrated into our meeting, again, the 100 most promising startups of the region, with a strong participation of Jordan. Finally, or fourth, we have to pay more attention to the environment, not just to climate change. I hear we experience even the climate change just now with unusual weather conditions. But we have to fight the erosion of soil, the erosion of water, particularly in this region. And finally, peace and reconciliation. I don't have to go into this issue, but I want to express our special appreciation to you, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, to be with us as a tireless fighter in the world for peace and reconciliation. Your Majesties, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end my remarks by thanking Jordan and Her Majesties not only for being such great hosts, but even more importantly, for being such a powerful force for good at a critical time for the future of your country and for the region. It is now my honor to announce His Majesty to declare this 2019 World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa officially open. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Warm welcome to this truly distinguished gathering, and I am truly delighted to help kick off what promises to be an outstanding program. Let me extend a special welcome to the heads of states who join us today from Armenia, Djibouti, Palestine, and Nigeria, as well as my dear friend, Secretary General of the United Nations, and the Chief Executive of Afghanistan. To your excellencies and my dear friend, Professor Schwab, thank you for standing behind the region's heroes and visionaries and pioneers, the young people who are shaping our future. My friends, this forum will be tackling some of the most important issues affecting our region, but they all boil down to a simple reality. Our people need you, leaders and partners in so many fields, to act. And the entire world needs you to succeed. The more than 300 million people of our region provide a talent pool eager to compete on a global level and a huge marketplace of consumers and businesses. And every investment in this region's great opportunities, for every investment that creates jobs for our young people and helps families bring good pay home, our economies grow and opportunities redouble. That's a benefit for us, but it is also a benefit for others. Because what happens in our region impacts the entire world. And it takes a broad partnership to create a platform for economic growth, private sector investment, and productivity at every level, including small and medium enterprises, public sectors that support business confidence and economic success, as well as global partners to flow investments into positive futures. Now, all this begins at home with region-led initiatives for prosperity and growth. And Jordan is committed to this path. Now, as you know, our economy has faced significant challenges over the past decade. and doing the right thing for desperate refugees, Jordan's own people have paid an enormous price. And we are working closely with international partners to increase help for refugees and host communities alike. We are also looking towards the growth that comes with abundant real opportunity. Our economic situation is promising, and indeed, the recent London initiative was a timely vote of confidence in our strong and resilient country and our sound approach. This, of course, is just the beginning. To grow opportunities faster, Jordan is making a priority of economic sectors that offer high growth potential and multiple openings for investment. Now, these will take advantage of our country's distinctive economic strengths, including our many FTAs and strong trade ties linking us to more than 1 billion consumers worldwide. And we're also here harnessing our rich resources of clean, renewable energies. Indeed, by next year, we expect 1/5 of our energy will be generated through renewables. But our most important strength is Jordan's high-skilled human capital. Our young people are globally connected, tech-savvy, fluent in multiple languages, and determined to succeed. They are proven assets to every enterprise. And we have already seen this strength at work in the success of Jordan's ICT industry, which has created thousands of new jobs and accessed markets across the region and beyond. Indeed, a national focus on education and innovation has helped nurture an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and startups, helping Jordan lead the way in creative, youth-oriented sectors. And the same sectors that benefit from our people's strong skill sets also opens doors to good jobs they need and expect. And let me say, women are a critical part of our economic future, and we're expanding every avenue to success. A little later today, you will hear about one of our most promising service sectors, tourism. We are seeing rising numbers of foreign visitors to Jordan. They know and trust our welcoming, secure country, and they are drawn to our many and diverse destinations. And tourism is only one area of growth. Others include professional services, business process outreach, outsourcing, social media marketing, app development, and more. And Jordan is actively supporting the growth of opportunity. Now, across all sectors, reforms are underway to support and foster a healthy business climate. We will continue to back innovation and enterprise, from startups to the global leaders that have made us a base. And above all, we are listening to you about what is needed for opportunity to flourish. My friends, the challenges our countries face today are not just problems to solve. They are opportunities to collaborate and move forward together. And believe me, anything that you want for yourselves and your families, our region's people want for themselves and their families too. Good jobs, livable cities and communities, technologies and apps designed for our shared prosperity. So in your meetings here, when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, think about the ways our world can transform people's lives for the better, and then help that transformation succeed. When you discuss economic models, think of how to best serve our young people and then help them achieve the hope and fulfillment they deserve. And when you consider environmental stewardships, look not only at the big picture, but the small actions that harm or help, and then decide to help. And as you seek common ground here and in the days ahead, remember that what you achieve together will be vital to the future we all share. I wish you every success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Majesty. May I now ask the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, to join us.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I thank their Majesties, King Abdullah II and Queen Rania Al Abdullah, as well as the people and government of Jordan for hosting this timely meeting. Your Majesty, it had been a pleasure to work with you across the decades. From my time as Prime Minister of Portugal, through my years as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and now in my present capacity. You have always been a champion of peace, and you have been voice for interreligious coexistence and mutual respect, as recognized by the awarding of the Templeton Prize for 2018, and I was honored to join you on that occasion. And you have been an ally of people in need in and beyond the region. Indeed, as we all know, Jordan has demonstrated exceptional generosity to people fleeing conflict and upheaval in Palestine, in Syria, and elsewhere, with an enormous impact on Jordan's economy and society. 2 years ago, I visited the Zaatari camp for the 5th time, and once again saw Jordan's generosity in action. This meeting of the World Economic Forum builds on other gatherings earlier this year, in London and Brussels, which marked the start of a new partnership approach between Jordan and the international community in pursuit of sustainable growth and self-reliance. In light of the pressures on the country, Jordan deserves strong solidarity from the international community. But let me also stress the bigger picture and brighter narrative. Beyond the impacts linked to the Syrian crisis, the Israeli-Palestine conflict, Jordan is also a country with large investment opportunities for private sector-led growth. And here, let me give you my personal example. When I was High Commissioner for Refugees, and in the context of the reform of the organization, we decided to create a global ICT center to support our ICT activities worldwide. We selected the country to do it based on costs, on the quality of manpower, and namely digital literacy, and also, evidently, on the infrastructure of the country. Jordan came first. The center was built, the results outstanding. So, to all those that are pondering an investment in Jordan, my message is very clear. Do what I did, and you will not repent. Jordan remains a fundamental pillar of regional stability, and UN agencies are actively supporting the country's determined efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And Jordan is a leading contributor to United Nations peacekeeping, with hundreds of troops and police in several of our operations, another vital, generous contribution. And Jordan was also the driving force behind the landmark resolution of the Security Council on youth that highlighted the importance of including the voices of young people in our work for peace. With its own large and dynamic youth population and with the right support, Jordan is poised to reap a demographic dividend. For these reasons and more, I trust that we will see at this forum strong and wide-ranging expressions of international commitment to Jordan at this crucial time. Excellencies, this is indeed a critical moment for the region. The United Nations is deeply engaged in a surge of diplomacy for peace, not always successful, I must confess, to untie the Gordian knot of conflict and instability. Resolving the region's conflicts is an imperative, including the two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace with secure and recognized borders, and with Jerusalem as capital of the two countries. And in some cases, I believe there is progress to report. I just came from Tunisia, which successfully held its first free municipal elections last year, and where the democratic transition continues to advance. And in Egypt, I spoke with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar Mosque about what more we can do to advance tolerance and mutual respect and combat hatred of all kinds. My special advisor for the prevention of genocide is defining a global plan of action against hate speech, and High Representative for the Alliance of Civilizations is working on a plan for safeguarding religious sites. And these are two concerns in which Jordan has had a pioneer work in the world that we all respect and admire. I am convinced that it is crucial to look at the Middle East and North Africa not only as an area of conflict, but as a region of opportunities. With smart approaches internally and support from the international community, we can unleash remarkable dynamism and capacity. In recent years, several countries have managed to integrate into their constitutions some of the political demands articulated in the streets and to strengthen social protection, good governance, and human rights. There have been determined efforts to address violent extremism that take us beyond security approaches to the challenge. And I want to underline some notable steps against gender-based discrimination, including new legislation on domestic violence, new penalties for sexual harassment, for the removal of constraints on the participation of women in labor markets, and an increase in women's representation in parliament and decision-making. Indeed, the empowerment of women is essential. One recent study indicated that achieving full and real gender parity would increase the region's gross domestic product by 2.7 trillion by 2025. And just as Jordan is striving to empower its youth, so must the entire Arab world, where 2/3 of the people are under the age of 30, the highest share ever, do the same. This demographic momentum will last for at least the next 2 decades and requires a massive investment in education, skills, and participation to reap its full potential for development and peace. Your Majesties, Excellencies, the most systemic risk facing us all today is climate change. Climate change is moving faster than our efforts to address it. The World Meteorological Organization just reported that we are seeing record highs in land and ocean temperatures, sea levels, and greenhouse gas concentrations. And we are seeing, from fires in California to floods in Mozambique, the dramatic impact of extreme weather events. This region will face some of the worst impacts, in particular increased water stress and desertification, which will reduce the amount of arable land and increase dependence on food imports. For Jordan, already one of the world's driest countries, climate change is likely to exacerbate such pressures and raise new challenges to sustainable development. So it is high time for more urgency and more ambition, not only in meeting the stress, but in reaping the benefits of climate action. This is why I'm convening a Climate Action Summit in New York on September. And I'm telling leaders, don't come with a speech, come with a plan to put us once and for all on a sustainable path. I want a summit to spur more ambitious commitments on mitigation, adaptation, and finance. And countries like Jordan that do not contribute much to climate change cannot be the victims of the fact that others are neglecting their own obligations. And I wanted to show how everyone can benefit from climate action, from jobs to health. And the opportunity in this region are enormously. Just see the potential of renewable energy. Climate action is indeed essential if we are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The cost of inaction is far greater than what it will require to set us on the path we know will pay huge dividends. And the involvement of the private sector, so well represented in this room, is essential for climate action. So I count on your support in making the summit a success. We are in a race against time, but it is a race we can win. Excellencies, climate change is one of the challenges on which we need all to act. Governments, private sector, innovators, investors, and civil society working in full cooperation as it was highlighted by the President of the World Economic Forum, my dear friend Klaus Schwab. Today we live with a paradox. Global challenges are more connected, but our responses remain fragmented. Globalization and technological progress have led to remarkable advances, but they also have generated increased inequality and the risks of disruption in job markets. These trends will be intensified within the context of the fourth industrial revolution and require our adequate collective response. Many people, sectors and regions feel they were left behind, and this has been a factor in reducing trust in political establishments and in rising populism. The United Nations is pursuing action across many fronts to support member states in meeting these challenges. And we continue to pursue the Sustainable Development Goals towards a fair globalization that works for all. I am a multilateralist, and I am deeply convinced that there is no other way to deal with global challenges than with a smart, evidence-based global response organized in a multilateral way to benefit all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General of the United Nations. Africa is an important neighbor and partner of the Middle East and North Africa. And we have the great pleasure to welcome President Muhammadu Buhari from Nigeria. And I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate you, Mr. President, for your re-election just some weeks ago. Welcome here to address the audience.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Your Majesty, King Abdullah II of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Your Excellency, the President of Armenia, Your Excellency, the President of Djibouti, Your Excellency, the President of Palestine, Your Excellency, the Vice President of Panama, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Jordan, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency, President of the World Economic Forum, Excellencies, delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to start by thanking His Majesty King Abdullah bin Hussein of Jordan for the special invitation to speak to you briefly at this event. I also want to congratulate the World Economic Forum for organizing this forum with the theme of building new platforms of cooperation. In this digital age, where physical borders no longer exist to protect even the most secured nations, the only way to overcome predatory and diversionary forces is for all well-meaning nations to work together for the greater good of mankind. Simply put, cooperation among sovereign nations is no longer a choice. It is an absolute necessity. In the last 10 years, the world as we know it has completely changed. We have seen and experienced significant shifts on many fronts: in technology, population and migration, trade and geopolitics, climate change, and many more. For some nations, these trends have had positive impacts. But of course, we have also seen the negative and destructive outcomes of these trends in other countries. It is my view that no region of the world has felt the full impact of these dramatic shifts and shocks like the Middle East and Africa, North and Sub-Sahara. On one hand, our region is blessed with very young, vibrant, enterprising, and dynamic population. We also have valuable natural resources that are the envy of many nations. These assets and endowments contributed to our region experiencing some of the highest economic growth rates in the world. On the other hand, however, we have also been hosts to some of the deadliest conflicts in recent history. The death, damage, and destruction caused by terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Boko Haram over the last 10 years will take decades to repair. By the special grace of God, today most of these terrorist organizations have been significantly degraded. The world came together to achieve this. Now we are faced with the task of rebuilding. It is at this point that we must ask ourselves how we, as a region, got to this point. The answer, at least in the case of Nigeria, is the lack of social and economic inclusion. As Nigeria celebrated being the largest economy in Africa and one of the fastest growing economies in the world, Nigerians were migrating in droves through harsh desert conditions and across treacherous seas to seek what they believe would be a better life in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe that the lack of social economic inclusion was the root cause of many challenges we are experiencing. Today, our population is 190 million people. By 2050, it is estimated that we hit 390 million, making us the third most populous country in the world. This means we must start working now to ensure this population is productively engaged. In the last 4 years, we focused on security while implementing inclusive policies. On the security front, we made significant gains in fighting Boko Haram. We have recaptured all territories held by Boko Haram in 2014. We have liberated thousands of Nigerians held against their will. Today, I am pleased to say no territory in the Federal Republic of Nigeria is held or controlled by Boko Haram. We are extremely grateful to the many countries that have stood with Nigeria to confront this global scourge, and in particular the Kingdom of Jordan, under the leadership of His Majesty the King. Furthermore, our economic diversification and social inclusion policies are also yielding positive results. Our country has now returned to the path of growth. We are making gains in the ease of doing business indices. A key driver for growth is the agricultural sector, where we aggressively push agricultural policies that empowered millions of rural citizens. In the spirit of building new platforms for cooperation, we partnered with the Kingdom of Morocco to domesticate fertilizer production in Nigeria and revive over 2 million tons of abundant fertilizer blending capacity. The outcome is we created tens of thousands of jobs in agriculture, logistics, manufacturing, and retail sectors. We are able to achieve moderate growth but it was inclusive. Nigeria is now at a new dawn and embarking on a new developmental project. We are determined to industrialize Nigeria, leveraging our comparative advantage. We recognize the private sector as the engine of growth and a veritable partner in our economic agenda. The Middle East is a natural partner. Africa and the Middle East must therefore focus on policies that will deliver shared economic prosperity for all our citizens. On trade and investment, for example, we can do more. Africa presents only 5% of Jordan's trade with the world. But we have the resources, the people, and the markets to do more. Opportunities exist in key job-creating sectors, such as agriculture, health, tourism, ICT, infrastructure, as well as textile, garmenting, to mention a few. Our new, inclusive, and diversified Nigeria is definitely open to business. Our population, resources, policies, and programs make it the most attractive investment destination in Africa. As friends and allies, we must therefore cooperate and leverage on our relative strengths. We must remain open to building new platforms of cooperation. As we deliberate over the next 2 days, I would ask all leaders present to reflect on our collective experiences. We must identify how we can work together. Today, we are living in a new world. In this new world without borders, my personal view is stability and sustainability can only be achieved through inclusive economic growth and enhanced cooperation among nations. I thank you all for listening, and I wish you a very successful, productive summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Buhari. This concludes our opening session, and I invite you to stay in your seats because we will immediately continue with the session on one of the most precious goods Jordan has, its potential for tourism. So thank you again for joining the opening session. Thank you, the speakers. Please give them a big hand again.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. In a few minutes, we're going to be hearing from His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Jordan, Mr. Omar Razaz. He will be addressing us in Arabic, so if you need translation, please use the headsets that were on your seat. But first, we're going to be seeing something that the World Economic Forum would like to share with us.
The original Industrial Revolution was driven by the discovery that you could use steam engines to do all kinds of interesting things.
That was followed by additional revolutions for electricity and computers and communications technology. We're now in the early stages of the fourth Industrial Revolution, which is bringing together digital, physical, and biological systems.
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
Everything around us is transforming. Markets, professions, we have to keep pace.
We have energy technologies that can power our civilization, but how do we get it and implement it at the scale we need at a price that people around the world can afford?
If we're able to do something to transform cities, to make them more efficient, then the impact can be huge.
We can use asset tracking, we can use IT, we can use 3D printing to decouple growth from the resource constraints we have.
The question of adding quality to quantity, it's really about a diverse, safe, healthy, and just world with clean air, clean water, clean energy.
Together we are fighting to preserve our fragile climate from irreversible damage and devastation of unthinkable proportions.
The prediction of 5 million jobs lost by 2020 to technology is serious, but the main question is, how will we define work? How will we share the wealth?
How can you have a doctor that really knows a lot about data? How can you have a biologist that knows about medicine?
We have to create a space that enables people to think freely, to think divergent thoughts, to think creative thoughts.
We really need a new education or new training.
We're working with a World in Motion and First Robotics, trying to encourage students from 3rd grade all the way up through the end of high school to pursue science, math, and different technologies.
It's this ability of digital technology to change outcomes, to truly empower people that can create a more equitable growth.
Fourth industrial revolution has the potential to make inequalities visible and to make them less acceptable in the future.
I was the first person in the world to be able to voluntarily move my legs while stepping in a robot. The cure will be possible if enough of the right people have the will to make it happen.
We're seeing this incredibly exciting convergence of genome editing, DNA sequencing. Governments have a very important role to play in enabling the safe and effective use of technologies.
We need to take responsibility at every level of society to adapt to these technological challenges, which are redefining what it means to be completely embedded in this world.
Even though we have everyday problems we have to solve, we have to find a way to lay the foundations for the innovations of tomorrow.